Welcome back to Royal Show. Today we're talking about one of the most fascinating encounters in recent times, the meeting between King Charles III of the United Kingdom and President Donald Trump of the United States. Two leaders who could not be more different in their personalities, in their style, and even in their values, yet brought together on the same stage because of tradition, politics, and global importance. This is one of those stories where the contrast is so striking that you almost have to sit back and say, wow, this is history unfolding in front of our eyes. Now let's be honest, whenever Donald Trump steps into the spotlight, the world pays attention. And whenever King Charles appears in public, especially since becoming king, the world also watches closely. But when you put them side by side, that's where the drama really begins. One is loud, brash, often unfiltered, never afraid to throw an insult or use bold language. The other is reserved, careful, deeply polite, but also quietly opinionated in his own way. This is not just a clash of personalities. It's almost like watching two very different worlds collide. On paper, they do have a few things in common. King Charles is 76 years old. Donald Trump is 79. Both are extremely wealthy men. Both have gone through divorce. And both love Scotland. Trump's mother was born in the rugged Isle of Lewis, and he himself has poured millions into Scottish golf resorts. Charles, on the other hand, has spent many summers in Scotland, especially at Balmoral Castle, which has always been a beloved royal retreat. So, you could say that their roots touch the same soil, but that's pretty much where the similarities end. Trump, interestingly enough, has described himself as a big fan of the royal family. He has praised Prince William, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and said that he's gotten to know several members of the family and that they're great people. He clearly enjoys the association because it gives him prestige. It makes him look more statesman-like in the eyes of his supporters. For Trump, image is everything, and being connected, even loosely, to the world's most famous royal family adds to his brand. Charles, however, plays it very differently. He keeps his words diplomatic. He has admitted that he and Trump get along, but he has also pointed out that they have very different views, especially on climate change and environmental protection. Trump himself even admitted once that Charles is a little bit more into environmental restrictions than he is. And let's be real here, a little bit is putting it mildly. Charles has spent his entire adult life championing environmental causes, warning about climate change, and encouraging sustainability. Trump, on the other hand, has rolled back environmental policies, mocked the idea of climate urgency, and consistently put business and economy above environmental concerns. Right there, you can see a clash of values that no polite dinner conversation can truly hide. But the differences don't end with the environment. Let's look at their approach to foreign policy. Earlier this year, Charles received Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at Sandringham, his private country retreat. That gesture was widely seen as symbolic, a way for the king to show his support for Ukraine during the ongoing war. At the same time, Trump has been openly critical of Zelensky. In fact, he humiliated him during a White House visit, publicly dressing him down in a way that shocked many observers. Imagine that contrast. One leader offering quiet support in a warm, private setting, the other publicly scolding in front of the cameras. It says everything about their different styles. There's also the issue of Canada. Charles, as head of state of Canada, made a speech defending Canadian sovereignty after Trump suggested that maybe one day the United States could make Canada its 51st state. Can you imagine? For Canadians, that was no joke. And Charles took the opportunity to remind everyone that democracy, pluralism, and self-determination are values that Canadians hold dear. He flew to Canada while still undergoing cancer treatment, just to make that point. That's dedication. That's a king, stepping into his role as protector of his realms. Trump's casual remark about annexing Canada may have been made half seriously, but for Charles, it was no laughing matter. Religion is another fascinating contrast. Charles is the head of the Church of England, which makes him the symbolic leader of the global Anglican community. But he has always said that his duty is to protect religious diversity, not just his own faith. At his coronation in 2023, he made history by inviting representatives of all the major religions in Britain. He even inaugurated the King Charles III wing at the Oxford Centre for Islamic Studies, showing his commitment to interfaith dialogue. That's Charles's way, embracing diversity, quietly building bridges. Trump's religious journey, meanwhile, has been quite different. He was raised Presbyterian like his mother, but in 2020, he said he now considered himself a non-denominational Christian. He has always positioned himself as a defender of what he calls Judeo-Christian values, promising to protect them. During his presidency, he even instituted the controversial Muslim ban, restricting travel from several Muslim-majority countries. More recently, he has claimed that Christians are persecuted in America under Joe Biden, and he created a task force to combat what he calls anti-Christian bias. In fact, during his second inauguration, just 6 months after surviving an assassination attempt, he said that he had been saved by God to make America great again. For some of his supporters, that wasn't just rhetoric. They truly believe Trump has a kind of divine right to lead. And that brings us to another point of difference: personality in public life. Trump is never afraid to insult his opponents. He uses sharp words, sometimes crude language, and thrives on conflict. He loves to provoke because it gets attention. Charles, on the other hand, is famously polite in public. Even if insiders say he can be impatient and sometimes short-tempered in private, in front of the cameras, he always keeps his composure. Where Trump seeks the spotlight by stirring controversy, Charles tends to rise above it, projecting dignity, even when under pressure. Even gardening shows their difference. Charles is a passionate gardener. He plants trees wherever he goes. He loves the soil. He speaks often about nature. Trump? Well, he had the century-old rose garden at the White House turned into a patio with chairs and umbrellas. And he even had a historic magnolia tree cut down because it was considered unsafe. For Charles, gardening is about preservation. For Trump, it's about change, modernization, and perhaps convenience. Again, two men with two totally different instincts. So what happens when these two men sit down together? Well, royal historian Ed Owens summed it up well when he said, King Charles and President Donald Trump are very different personalities. But here's the key point. It's not really up to Charles to decide who visits. That's the decision of the British government. The king has to play the host, no matter who it is, whether he likes it or not. He has to represent the dignity of the monarchy and welcome foreign leaders, even those with whom he might personally disagree. And that's what makes this story so interesting. Because on one hand, you have Trump, the outspoken, unpredictable, polarizing figure who thrives on attention and controversy. On the other, you have Charles, the cautious, duty-bound monarch who tries to maintain unity, stability, and respect. They might smile for the cameras, they might exchange polite words, but underneath the surface, they are worlds apart. At the end of the day, this visit is about more than just personalities. It's about the relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. Two allies bound by history, culture, and politics. No matter how different Trump and Charles may be, the ties between their nations remain strong. And maybe that's the lesson here. Leaders come and go, monarchs change, presidents change, but the connection between countries continues. Still, it's hard not to look at these two men and wonder what their private conversations are really like. Do they talk about Scotland, since they both love it? Do they argue about climate change? Do they compare gardens? Or do they just smile, shake hands, and keep things polite for the cameras? We may never know the full truth, but one thing's for sure. Watching King Charles and Donald Trump together is a study in contrasts, a living reminder that leadership takes many different forms. And as this unprecedented second state visit unfolds, the world will be watching every handshake, every smile, and every carefully chosen word. Because sometimes the most fascinating drama isn't about what is said, but about what is left unsaid. Thank you for watching Royals Show. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the fascinating relationship between King Charles and President Donald Trump, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, because we'll be bringing you many more stories about the royals, world leaders, and the moments where history and personality collide. Until next time, stay tuned and take care.